What's up YouTube, capital G here. So this is amazing, this is shocking, and quite frankly I think that this is completely unbelievable. I can't even believe that this is real life and that this actually happened. But yeah, what you guys are looking at is a top 8 regional build of weather painters. This was piloted by Jason Ariel Lopez at the Lubbock, Texas regional, and he took this all the way to the freaking top 8. Now this is actually pretty damn incredible, as this was a post Flames of Destruction meta. I believe that this regional was on the 12th, so not that long ago. It wasn't new format, but it's actually interesting because I think the fact that it wasn't new format actually makes this even more impressive, because you're basically talking about him having to deal with True Draco with 3 Masterpiece, and having to deal with Pendulum Magicians when they still have Astrograph Sorcerer at 3, but at the same time he has to deal with the Flames of Destruction meta where Altergeist are like full power, and you're dealing with the Nightmare deck, Spiral Nightmare, and Goki Nightmare, and he did all of this with a fucking Weather Painter deck. Yes, a Weather Painter deck. I did not mistake that. This is not an error, guys. This is something that I assume probably snuck up on absolutely everybody. And if you don't know anything about Weather Painters, and basically, you guys remember they came out in Spirit Warriors with the next Zodiac Magical Musketeers. What's up, Lithium? I love Lithium. And I love that meme as well. They didn't really see any competitive play. I believe that this might be their second regional top 8 in TCG history. And it's because, I mean, I've played the deck a bunch. The deck has some significant pitfalls. I think that the biggest 2 deficits or problems with Weather Painters are, number 1, they are completely normal summon based. I mean, they do special summon off of their effects when you banish their monsters for the Weather Painter spell and trap effects, but in general, the way that they really make board presence is basically by normal summoning. And it's not like these monsters really have that many, like, they don't have that many great beaters, which actually leads me to my second major problem with the deck. The deck has some significant offensive woes. People like to talk about how Altergeist can't really do much damage. Same thing with Magical Musketeers, but Altergeist have like all the disruption with like Sequidius and Multi-Faker and Protocol, and a lot of removal and whatnot. Well, Weather Painters, they definitely struggle when it comes to offense. I mean, Weather Painter Snow, which is arguably the best monster, generally the monster that you want to summon turn 1, because it is a card that gets your Weather Painter spells and traps, and it places them straight on the field, which, by the way, it does allow you to put those cards on the field under Anti-Spell Fragrance. If your opponent happens to have that, you can still put your Weather Painter spells on the field because it just places them on the field. It doesn't actually activate the card. This card has 0 attack, and when you look at the monsters, 1500, 1700 out of Thunder, you don't really have many beaters in this deck, so the deck has always lacked offense. And your main source of removal is like the Thunder Canvas. This card basically turns all your monsters into Neospatian Grand Moles, to where you banish your monsters during the battle phase and you bounce your opponent's monster that was actually attacking or that you attacked into. It's kind of nice, it's kind of cute. It's a way of outing things like Bolo Dragon or Big Boss monsters, but it doesn't really help you do much damage. In fact, they actually have a card, and this is it right here, the Cloudy Canvas, that it lets you attack directly with your Weather Painter monsters, but it also cuts your monster's attack in half, which kind of feel like that exacerbates the big problem with Weather Painters. Now, the way that I think that he kind of circumvented this problem was by adding in the Mech Knights, and this is something that I had never actually even thought about. In my Weather Painter build, I tried running Masterpiece. It was gimmicky as hell, because you'll notice all the Weather Painter cards are like, they're continuous spells and traps, and you can set them directly. Thunder can also like pop your continuous spells and traps to basically like put these cards on the field. So I used to play like Masterpiece in my deck, and I'd summon a Masterpiece that was like unaffected by spells and traps and pray to God that I could win off the Masterpiece. That is not available anymore. But yeah, I think the Mech Knights make a lot of sense. If you guys don't know, the Weather Painters are completely column based, just like the Mech Knights are. And the thing about the Mech Knights, and the reason that they can actually kind of work with the Weather Painters, is the Weather Painters actually, the spells and traps basically stay on the field ideally for the entire game. It's the monsters that basically come and go, and they can kind of dodge removal, or they can kind of constantly banish themselves, summon themselves back during your turn. These spells and traps are like the constant. So if you ever have your board set up to where your opponent has a trap or a back row card in a certain column, and then you happen to have a Weather Painter card in that same column, but you already have a monster there, in most cases, like if you were playing a Mech Knight deck, you really couldn't do anything unless you like lost that monster. Basically, you'd have to, like, I don't know, link with it or have it die or something like that. Well, then weather painters, your monsters can like all banish themselves based on these weather painter spells and traps. So what you do is, if you happen to have a mech knight and you need to get some damage off, you just banish your, weather painter that it's not going to really provide that much damage. You get an effect like if you have the snow, this is basically the rota for the deck, where you banish any of these dudes until the end phase. Then you search a monster, and then you basically bring this card back during your standby phase, and then you can just summon a mech knight in that zone. And I think it's kind of cool because you're basically just empowering a deck that is column based with another column based archetype. Now, if you're wondering about the kaijus and you're thinking, Cap, okay, I get why you're running kaijus in this deck. Obviously, to out masterpiece and to out the vortex dragons. Well, the thing about kaijus is kaijus have always worked in weather painters. I've always thought weather painters are best going second because their core is not really all that strong. I kind of feel like they need the extra card, but you always run kaijus in weather painters because of this card right here, the Weather Thunder Canvas. This is a card that basically, if you I just explained it before, it turns your monsters into grand mole. So essentially you go second, you basically like kaiju your opponents, or it doesn't have to be in the first turn, but you kaiju your opponent, and then if they attack into your monster, you just flip this over and you bounce the kaiju right back to your hand. Or if they're not going to attack, then you can just run into the kaiju and you basically bounce it, and you can use it during like another turn. Now, it used to be for you to get any offense out of the weather painters, you had to do kind of like ghetto stuff, like just crazy cheese stuff, like what I was talking about with running masterpiece and weather painters, which wasn't really like consistent. You had to run diagram to kind of search it, or you had to rely on like interrupted slumber. You'd have to interrupted slumber your opponent, give your opponent like a small Humongous or Gamma Seal. Hopefully you can get Dogoran on the field and it could survive, or you could just hard draw two of them, kaiju your opponent, then summon your big kaiju. You had to rely on kind of gimmicky plays like that, but now that you have these guys, not only do you have those plays available, but you also open up some rank 8 plays, which I have never summoned a rank 8 in weather painters, and I never thought that you would. But the mech knights obviously bring some level 8s to the field or to the table. You're obviously going to run kaiju, so you do have the potential of going in for some spicy level 8s. There are some things that in my testing I've seen conflict with, like scapegoat, which the reason that scapegoat can be a little touch and go in this deck is because let's just say that you have 3 weather painters on the field, and honestly that's kind of a stretch. Usually in most cases you only have like 2, but let's just say you have 2 weather painters on the field and you banish both of them, and then you use something like scapegoat during your opponent's end phase. Well, you can't bring back both of your weather painters. Like, one of your weather painters will be able to get summoned back, the other one will actually just die because you won't have obviously the zones open. The weather painters, if I'm not mistaken, they summon themselves during the standby phase. So this is why scapegoat can be a little risky, because if you have like 3 weather painters that are banished and you have these 4 scapegoat tokens on the field, well, it's kind of like Omega in that situation. Only one zone is free for your dudes to come back to. So scapegoat is here for the explosive plays, but it can be a little counterproductive. I do like the fact that Aurora was ran in this deck. I know a lot of people don't like Aurora. I personally run it because it makes it so that your weather painter, or really I believe that all your spells and traps cannot be destroyed by card effects. Let me just read this card right quick. Let's see. Your opponent cannot target weather spells and traps with card effects. Oh, okay. So basically, yeah, your weather painter spells and traps can't be destroyed by card effects, and they can't be targeted. So it turns off your opponent's Twin Twister. They can still, I guess, like pop your Valhalla and your set cards, but your weather painter canvas cards, like, they can't be blown up by Twin Twisters. They can't be targeted by Cosmic Cyclone. So it kind of makes them protected. If you do normal summon her, because she is a level 6, but you can summon her off Valhalla. Valhalla actually can summon all of them. That's kind of one of the only ways to get 2 weather painters on the field in one turn. But if you do happen to normal summon her, whether it be, I don't know, just well, I guess it has to be by tributing like one of the little weather painters or something like that, she actually can set a weather painter canvas card straight from your deck, straight on the field, or you can get one from your graveyard. So she's a card that kind of like pays for herself when you summon. She has pretty decent stats, but it's never a card that you're going to run, like, you're never going to want to run more than one of her. Maybe if weather painters had like a destiny draw or something like that, that would be kind of nice, where if you just like banish the weather painter on the field, draw 2 cards, and then it'd like be summoned back, like, that'd be kind of cool. Some of the weather painter cards are a little underpowered. That's another reason why weather painters didn't really take off competitively. Like, if you look at this card, the Rain Canvas, This is one that it bounces your opponent's spell and trap, which it's a quick effect, so it's kind of nice. You know, if your opponent sets like 4 traps or something like that, you banish one of your weather painters, you get to bounce their card during the end phase, so they can't use it. But it obviously should have been like, it should have just been hard destruction. Come on now, everybody knows that. This one's kind of like a ghetto Dark Law, where if your opponent searches exactly 1 card, you get to banish one of your weather painters. Again, anytime you banish by a spell or trap, your weather painters will come back during the standby phase, but you banish the card that they search. However, they do get a draw. That kind of sucks. So if your opponent is playing like a field spell deck, you're playing like 2 Draco and you know they can't do anything without that diagram, it might be worth it. If your opponent you just know can't do anything without that ABC hanger, it might be worth it to just banish that card and give them another draw, and hopefully that other draw isn't as important. Now I do notice in the side deck, I'm thinking he played a lot of pendulums, or he must have been expecting a lot of pendulums, because he's playing 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, and again, this is post Nightmare World, so you know, Dimensional Barrier seems like it would be kind of shitty against, like, you know, the Nightmare Spiral deck or the Nightmare Goki deck. Like, what does D Barrier do? But I guess you're just, you know, you're not gonna side it in that case. Even against True Draco, I just don't really know what this does. I feel like this is only good against maybe ABC. Well, hold on, does ABC Buster Dragon count as like a fusion summon? I feel like they can still, can't they still summon that under Dimensional Barrier if you call fusions? I mean, I think it'll be like negated, but I feel like they can still just like summon it under. In fact, I don't even know if monsters summoned after are negated. I feel like they probably aren't, but I do like the cherries in here. Maybe the extra deck will probably have to be adjusted. I think the extra deck probably does need to be adjusted because he's running Waken the Dragon, which is a really good card. It's going to get better when the Brandish Maidens come out, because they have non-targeting back row removal, and they use that card a lot, especially with Kagari. They can use it multiple times in a turn, but I don't know if he's running exactly the extra deck to take care or to basically like capitalize off the card. I mean, like some of these cards in here, like this is, you know, your scapegoat package and whatnot, but honestly, I think I'd like to see like a Bills, right? Because if you're playing against True Draco and they tribute one of their spells and they end up blowing up your Waking the Dragon, okay, well, isn't Bills like auto? It's like literally auto when it gets True Draco, right? Like they can't kill it, so you can get Bells against them. If you're playing against the Brandish Maidens, you get Naturia Barkion and you basically auto win. Like even something like Darkest Diablos can't kill the Barkion, you just negate all their spells and you auto win. So I probably think that the extra deck needs to be adjusted a little bit. Maybe some of these rank 8s you probably can take out, like the Cypher Dragons. I definitely would keep Titanic Galaxy in. The rank 3s, you only run a couple of them. All your main weather painters are like level 3 and whatnot, but I do like the idea of this, but don't get used to this. I think that this is one of those, nobody expected it. Probably no one actually knew what the hell any of the Weather Painter cards did. If you weren't actually testing Weather Painters around the time Spirit Warriors came out, like, you don't know what these cards actually do. I wouldn't look for this deck to really do anything moving forward, but I still think that it is cool. Regardless, you guys let me know what you think. Oh man, am I going over? I'm at 12 minutes. We gotta cut this short. Thank you guys for watching. As always, you guys let me know what you thought of Weather Painters getting a regional top 8. Do you think it was just because of the Mech Knights? I'll say this, if he didn't run the Mech Knights, I think there's like 0 chance he would have topped, because the deck just does not have the offense. Seriously, I've played Weather Painters too much to know the deck has like 0 ways of like super getting aggressive. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.